You have to be thin, but not too thin. But you can never say that you want to be thin. You have to say you want to be healthy. But also you have to be thin. You have to have money, but you can't ask for money because that's crass. You have to be a boss, but you can't be mean. You have to lead, but you can't squash other people's ideas. You're supposed to be a loving mother, but you can't talk about your kids all the damn time. You have to be a career woman, but always be able to look out for others. You have to answer for men's bad behavior, which is insane, but if you point that out, you're accused of complaining. You're supposed to stay pretty for men, but not so pretty that you threaten other women because you're part of a sisterhood. But always stand out and always be grateful. But never forget that the system is rigged. So find a way to acknowledge it, but always be grateful. You have to never get old, never be rude. Never show off, never be selfish. Never fall down, never fail. Never show fear, never get out of line. It's too hard, it's too contradictory. And nobody gives you a medal or say thank you. And it turns out, in fact, that you're not just doing everything wrong, but also everything is your fault. I'm just so tired of watching myself and every single other woman tie herself into a knot so that people will like us. And if all of that is also true for a doll to represent us, then I don't even know. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So that little monologue you just heard, if you guys are unaware, was from the 2023 movie, The Barbie Movie, which that amazing monologue was given to us by the amazing, beautiful America Ferrera, queen, icon, we love her. Now look, I feel like America Ferrera is a very underrated actress in my opinion. She's been in a lot of great movies and she is definitely going to be a topic that we are talking about today because if anyone had to give a monologue that symbolized womanhood, body image, all that kind of stuff, America Ferrera is definitely the person who deserves to have said it. Because for her entire career, she has been dealing with these type of issues. And I will get into her. So you guys probably saw the warning in the beginning. This is definitely going to be a sensitive video. It's going to be very sensitive. So if you guys are sensitive, again, last warning, if you guys are sensitive about body image, eating disorders, I will be talking about that a lot in this video, unfortunately. Because it is unfortunately a big part of the 90s and the early 2000s. And of course it's still a part of society today. But the people I'm mostly going to be mentioning is mostly from the 90s, early 2000s. There's going to be some people who are included in the 80s, and there's going to be unfortunately some people who are included in like the 2010s. So this will be an informative video. Just for information in case you guys are curious about how crazy diet culture was in that time period. I did a lot of research for this video, so I hope you guys take a seat, chillax. I'll inform you from this moment on. Hope you guys enjoy the video. So diet culture became popular because of this term that you might have heard before called the heroin chick. And basically what that means is it was basically a type of body type that was known as being beautiful. The body type that all women wanted, celebrities, non-celebrities. It was unfortunately the look back then. And the reason it's called the heroin chick is because basically the characteristics to look like the heroin chick is basically to be pale and to have basically dark circles under their eyes. And of course to be very, very thin. Because most people look like this after taking heroin, thus the name heroin chick. This also basically all originated from the fashion model Gia Kurangi. I might have said her name wrong. Another very popular fashion staple in the 90s and 2000s was low-rise jeans. If you guys rewatched any Disney Channel show from around the early 2000s and 90s, you would notice that pretty much all of the main characters, who are notably all very thin, most of them. Not shaming if they aren't thin, obviously. But most of them are very, very thin because that's like the main character. People want them to be very thin. But most of them wore low-rise jeans. And low-rise jeans was to be said to only look good on thin people. The first person I'm going to discuss is the model and semi-actress, Liv Tyler. So Liv Tyler was basically a popular actress in the 80s. And unfortunately, she was known as being one of the chubbiest models at the time. And she looked like this. She looked like this. They basically wanted a very unrealistic body expectations from her. Because back then, a size 0 to 4 was the norm. But Liv Tyler is very tall. She is 5'10". So she wore a size 6, which is of course still considered very small, especially today. But apparently she wasn't small enough for the model community. It got even worse, especially when she had a kid, because she was shamed for not having the same body that she had before. There was also thumbnails like this. Yeah. So now we're going to be getting into America Ferrera. So America Ferrera really made her debut acting in the film Real Woman Got Curves in 2002, even though she was only 16 in this movie. So right off the bat, the title of the movie talking about curves, even though she was only 16, I know they didn't use the word fat, and I know it was supposed to be like body positivity throughout the whole movie, but it was portrayed very brutal because again, she wasn't big. She really was big, and of course she was still growing. She was only 16, but her character was brutally harassed in the movie. There was a scene where she was eating a piece of cake and her grandma told her to just stop eating it because she needs to lose weight. And then there was a time where her grandma straight up told her that she should be ashamed of herself, that she looks awful, that she just looks absolutely terrible, and she would look so much better without all that fat on her. And then America Ferrera's character was like, "You're the same size as me." But the grandma was like, "No, yeah, but I actually have a husband and have kids." Basically referring that if you're plus size, you won't have any of that you won't find love, and that you will never have kids. But luckily her character stood up for herself.
How dare anybody try to tell me what I should look like or what I should be, when there's so much more to me than just my weight?
But then a few years later, America Ferrera was in another movie, you might recognize this one more, called The Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants. And basically in this movie, she lost a few pounds for this role, and she was still considered the fat friend. She played a girl named Carmen, and she wore a size 8, and she was considered the fat friend. A size 8. And what made it worse is that she was smaller than the rest of the girls, which people thought made her look even chubbier. They made lots of jokes about this film and about America Ferrera in general. They of course joked about it in Family Guy.
Remember Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants? They have the magic girl power genes. Holy crap, what happened? I don't know. I think I turned into America Ferrera. I don't want this. Help! Someone help!
Family Guy jokes about everyone, so I guess I give him a pass. And then she was in a show called Ugly Betty, which was of course about her appearance, about her weight, about her looks. She never gets a break. So do you see why I included that monologue in the beginning of this video? America Ferrera deserved to say that monologue, because that was the first movie in a while where she wasn't treated as a joke. She was treated as basically a hero in the movie. She was. So I won't go too far into some of these because unfortunately lots of these women are they're very similar because they all have to do with fat shaming, and that also goes into the case of Drew Barrymore. Again, I won't go through so much about Drew Barrymore, but basically she was considered chubby a lot of her time in the media. She was really considered chubby, and it got so bad to the point where she would fat shame herself, and people thought it was becoming very concerning. She would call herself, that she needs to lose weight. She says she's like the size of a bus. She would say a whole bunch of really negative things about herself, so it definitely affected her self-image. So now I'm going to be talking briefly about the model Anna Nicole Smith. You might have heard her name. So she was a very famous model back in the 90s, and she had a lot of weight swings. But when she was at her highest weight, she was on the Howard Stern show, where he basically told her that women of her size shouldn't be wearing what she wore, which was just a plain tank top. And she agreed that she understands that she's a plus-size woman, but she doesn't see anything wrong with her outfit. But Howard was pressuring her to weigh herself on air, which basically ended up forcing her to lose weight in general, to be honest. And if you guys are unaware, Anna Nicole Smith did have a lot of struggles with drug and alcohol use, so she did die of a drug overdose in 2007. I feel like someone I didn't know too much about, to be honest, when it came to her being fat shamed, was Kate Winslet. If you guys forgot about her, yes, she does play Rose in Titanic, in case the name seems familiar, that's her. And I knew that as she got older, lots of people criticized her weight a lot. When she was getting older, she started changing. But what I didn't know is that, no, people fat shamed her when she was on Titanic. Like when she was actually playing Rose. People just criticized her because they say that she wasn't as thin as some of the other actresses at the time. And she was even more criticized the older she got. That leads us into Britney Spears. She was criticized a lot about her body, especially in 2007, because as you guys know, that was not her best year. That was when she was seen to have a lot of breakdowns, and the paparazzi was really on her ass. She was at an award show, and people were claiming that she wasn't as skinny as she was before, even though she was only 16 when she made her debut song, Baby One More Time. So of course, she wasn't done growing. Because people tend to forget that when you're 16, you're still growing. You're not going to look like that forever. Trust me. But people also tend to forget that this is the picture I'm talking about, by the way. This picture. People also tend to forget this is what she looked like after having a kid. She literally just gave birth. Like, right before this. And Britney also seemed to have called this out in her song, Piece of Me, where she says, I misses you're too big and you're too thin. Now, unfortunately, this one is probably the more recent ones on this list, and that is Miss Taylor Swift. So most people probably who are fans of Taylor Swift has probably heard about this one because she has been pretty open about it, especially in her documentary, Miss Americana. Taylor Swift was body shamed before, when she was suffering from an eating disorder, but didn't publicly state it. People said that she looked too sickly, and the kind of girl that makes girls conscious. But then when she took a few years off to work with herself, she was body shamed again for being a perfectly healthy rate in her Reputation era. She said it definitely affected her mental health too. Taylor also mentioned in her documentary that people speculated certain rumors about her, and some of them caused her to have a complete downward spiral into her eating disorder. It's horrifying what media has done to her. In the documentary, she stated, and I quote, I tend to get triggered by something, whether it's a picture of me where I feel my tummy is too big, or someone said that I look pregnant or something, and that would just trigger me to starve myself a little bit more. Just stop eating. Separate day, same video. Let's continue. Now, I know that this video is really gonna consist of 2000s girlies and 90s girlies, but there is someone from the 80s that I feel like should be brought up, and that is Princess Diana. So even though she wasn't aggressively shamed for her size in the media, she did say that she was shamed by her own husband, Prince Charles, at the time now King Charles. She admits that one time he grabbed her waist and then he told her that she was chubby, and that triggered her into becoming bulimic. so she lost a drastic amount of weight. This storyline was briefly talked about in the show The Crown. So this is another female celebrity that I won't go too far into because again, her story is unfortunately very similar to a lot of other female stories at the time, but I'm going to be talking about Reese Witherspoon because back in the 90s and early 2000s, people considered people who had rounder faces to be chubby despite what their body looked like, and Reese Witherspoon unfortunately fell victim to that because in her movie Cruel Intentions she was considered chubby. Now on to Alicia Silverstone, who, as most of you guys know, starred in the movie Clueless. She was considered chubby even though she had the same body type pretty much as Celine Dion and Cher, who was known as like the body inspiration, the thin inspiration if you must, during the 90s. But again, she was considered chubby all because she had a round face. Speaking of this woman, she had to take hiatus when she was casted as the role of Catwoman because she was getting so much hate for her size, even though she used to be a very famous model. Now, I have a lot to say about Renee Zellweger. So Renee was in a few movies called the Bridget Jones Diaries. The first movie of the trilogy was released in 2001, and there was a bunch of sequels about 3 years later. She famously gained weight for the role to fit her character, because apparently the character's size was a big part of the movie, and the film was full of fat jokes. Renee admitted to the struggle of her trying to gain weight for the role, and she admittedly had to eat basically 4,000 calories per day to reach her target quickly. But she did not gain any weight for the third movie, which her character Bridget is pregnant for the majority of. So during promotion for this film in 2016, Renee spoke out about how she feels about her character's weight being portrayed all these years later. In an appearance on the Today Show, she said, and I quote, "I never thought she had a weight issue. I thought which is something that all of us think, oh, I love to change this thing about myself, when in fact nobody notices it but you." And she added to British Vogue, "Bridget is a perfectly normal weight, and I've never understood why it matters so much." When she was on the Oprah Winfrey Show, she asked her how did she lose weight. She says that is probably her most asked question she's ever received for promotion for the movie. And she also stated, "It saddens me so much because it seems to imply that one way is being accepted and the other way is invaluable. That is just not true." So this one, a lot of the younger people might not know about. But this is about Martine McCutcheon. I probably said her name wrong as well. I'm sorry. But she played the fat intern in the movie Love Actually. Yeah, she played Hugh Grant's intern. The whole movie, they basically just called her fat. And even her own father called her Tubbs. Tubbs. Look at her at the premiere. You're gonna tell me that that is fat? That's crazy. I watched Love Actually for the first time this Christmas. Look, I know it was a different time. It was 2003, I think this movie came out. But holy cow. She's literally body gold. Next up we have is the infamous, kind of the main person I think of when I think of Fat Jimmy in the 90s. And yes, she's in the thumbnail. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Miss Jessica Simpson. So yes, her picture is in the thumbnail mainly because there was a picture of her from like, I don't know, like a freaking, it was like an outside event or something. And someone snapped a picture of her that went trending, people calling her obese and horribly fat for years. It was in 2007, and every magazine cover was talking about her weight and this particular picture. The headline's reading, "This is how she rolls." And this is something I also put into the thumbnail in case you were curious. Carol Moss tweeted years later, after people re-looked in the terrible world of diet culture, she tweeted this: "If Gen Z wants to understand millennials, they first need to understand that for the entirety of 2008, we were told that this was the most disgusting a person could ever look." The next person I'm going to discuss is Emma Ward. She was a model only by the age of 14 and was on the cover of Vogue magazines by the time she turned 16. And she was always known for being very thin. But she soon had a fallout with the model company after she was fat-shamed on a catwalk, where an editor said this: "I almost didn't recognize her compared to the other ultra-skinny models. This girl looked like she gained about 15 pounds. Big, almost bloated. She was only 102 pounds at 5'10". I honestly didn't know about this until doing research for this video. But apparently Scarlett Johansson is included on this list. And there was a time in my life, I never had an eating disorder or anything, but there was a time in my life where I was very health conscious. I wanted to be really thin, I wanted to look the best as I could, and it was when I was in middle school, because it was really popular back then. And Scarlett Johansson was my the inspiration. It's cringy to say it, but she kind of was. And knowing that she got fat shamed, what? So basically, several years ago, there was a tabloid photo pic of her at the beach. It was obviously captured from a distance, and she basically had her back to the camera. They were saying how lumpy and fat she was, and saying that she was covered in cellulite, as if cellulite is not normal. Just because it was an unfiltered photo, they think it's unacceptable. Up next is Ashley Benson. "I was told I was too fat for the part," she said about a new role that she has been rejected from. "I'm a size 2. I cried for 30 minutes. But then you have to let it roll off your shoulders, or else it can cause a serious eating disorder. A lot of people in this industry hear that they need to lose weight more than they should. It does make you stronger though, because if you let that affect you, you can't be in this industry. You would go crazy." Basically confirming that eating disorders are so normal for models. It's kind of abnormal if you don't have one, apparently. Next one up is Tyra Banks. So there was that infamous moment which Tyra was blasted for gaining weight on tabloids. There was of course a photographed picture of her in a bathing suit, but she definitely called them out for it. Because the paparazzi always tries to find the worst angles as possible so they could have a headline, fat-shaming celebrities.
"I have one thing to say to you. Kiss my fat ass."
Another Disney Channel star, Hilary Duff. Hilary was basically being dragged after she left Disney because she started wearing bodycon dresses, and her body was also changing because she wasn't a kid anymore. And of course the bodycon dresses definitely showed off her body a little more than they showed on Disney. And they said that her figure definitely wasn't good enough, because right after she turned 18, they zoomed up on her ass and they commented on it. So the last celebrity I'll talk about, even though there is unfortunately a lot more, is Anne Hathaway, because I did not know that she was also body shamed. She wasn't necessarily criticized for her weight through the media, but she was in the film The Devil Wears Prada in 2008, where she played a character named Andy. And there was a scene where she had to play a fatter version of the character Andy. And since she was so thin, she had to go up to a size 6 to be considered fat. 6 is fat? They had to add extra padding for her to look like a size 6, which was considered fat. Okay, so now that I'm done with the celebrity aspect of this list, I'm going to be discussing a little bit of popular shows and movies, that specific stuff that talked about body image in in the industry. And I think the first one that came to my mind was in Friends, Fat Monica. So if you guys are unaware, the character Monica, played by Courtney Cox, they always made a nod to Monica's character when she was plus size back in the day. And they always, even after she lost weight, talked about it.
And then I broke up with her.
Why?
Well, because she came back the third summer and she'd gotten really fat.
They would always tease her about her and her old body, always just calling her Fat Monica. In an episode, they showed flashbacks about her when she was plus size and how she officially met her, her now husband when they first met. But the character Chandler, her love interest, at the time did not even give her a second glance because she was plus size, and called her fat behind her back.
Oh, no, it's cool. You can stay here. My parents won't mind.
No, it's not that. I just don't want to be stuck here all night with your fat sister.
Hey.
Which led her to her only choice, which was to lose weight, because she feels like that's the only way she can get a relationship. So she does lose a drastic amount of weight. And by the next year, Chandler was smitten with her.
Hi, Chandler.
Oh my God.
But Monica also admits that she doesn't feel any better now that she's thin, showing that her body wasn't everything that she needed. So I didn't realize all this. This is actually something I put in much later because I didn't realize this until I was kind of editing this video a little bit. But another show I put down here is Zoe 101. And if you guys paid attention and watched Zoe 101, you would realize there is a lot of eating shaming, weight shaming, calorie shaming. There is a lot. And I wrote some down to share with you because I feel like it should be discussed. I won't lie, the character Zoe in Zoe 101 definitely made me feel insecure about some stuff that I ate when I was a kid. Her character would always talk about watching her curves and watching what she eats by only the age of 13. She sometimes will shame other characters if they don't eat as healthy as her. There was also an adult character named Coco who was the girl's dorm advisor. And the main point of her character was supposedly mainly an unattractive, overweight, unappealing woman going through a quarter-life crisis who basically has a very toxic relationship with her boyfriend. That's literally her character. Not to mention she's also constantly eating on the show, like everything in sight. She's also very mentally unstable. I don't know if that has anything to do with the weight, but it is a big part of her character. Pretty much every episode that she's in, they fat shame her even in her attempts to eat healthy. In one episode, she decides to eat salad because her dietitian told her to and told her to take baby steps. So she had salad with the side of Thousand Island dressing. And, of course, Zoe, without even, congratulating her on trying to eat healthy, trying to better herself, she criticized her for how fattening Thousand Island dressing is. There was also another scene where a very thin character, who is male by the way, so this doesn't really have to do with the womanhood of the 90s, but I feel like it's worth mentioning. He talked about losing weight to the other characters, and the other characters encouraged him to do so, even though he is very thin, very thin. And again, he's only 13. I don't think they should normalize dieting at 13. So he was so desperate to lose weight that he ate this new chemical that his friend created to help him lose weight. And this chemical definitely had some side effects, which included slurring his words and wobbly walking, but they kind of encouraged him to continue eating it either way, to keep his sexy figure. That's the word they used. Not to mention a very concerning scene that even I noticed when I was younger. It had to do with this scene with the character Nicole, where she got a piece of cake from the lunch line, but basically when we saw it, she was just kind of picking at the plate longingly, looking that she really wants to eat it.
Okay, I should not eat this chocolate cake.
But then she admits that she can't eat the cake. The character Lola asked her why'd she get it then, and she And she basically said that she's weak.
Here, Zoe, you have it. No, I'm trying to be good. Lola, go for it. There's like 1 billion calories in that thing.
So they all agreed to just take one bite. And they do. But after they take the one bite, they look like they really want to take more, but they decide not to. Mind you, these are 14-year-old girls we're talking about. 14-year-old girls. And they are worried this much about eating a piece of cake. Like, what? Especially because throughout the entire show, we just see them eating rabbit food. Like, they are constantly eating grapes. So, I don't watch anime, but I kind of did some research on this, and I guess I would bring this up. But it's in the movie Sailor Moon. So basically, it was an anime in the 90s, I believe, where a girl gets upset about her weight. And again, she was not even close to being fat. Yes, it's animated, but still. In fact, she looked even too thin, even anime standards. And her family was brutally encouraging her to lose weight. And basically told her to just stop crying and stop eating. And what's also really concerning is the movie Bring It On. There was a scene where a cheerleader was being body shamed. Of course, the cheerleader looked like this. She looked like this. She was considered fat. And basically saying that she should look like one of the Olsen twins, who were battling anorexia at the time. Basically saying that she should look like she's anorexic. And I know lots of you are probably wondering why I obviously am only talking about the girls, even though it definitely happened to a lot of the guys. And just to make it fair, these are the 2 guys I can think of on the top of my head that also had to deal with this. I feel like the number 1 person that comes to my head is Kevin James. I definitely think of Kevin James off the top of my head because he was known as like the fat funny guy. He was the fat funny guy, and I guess you might consider him a big guy. But again, they tried to fool us into thinking that he was like obese. But the movie that kind of showcased him the best was his movie Zookeeper, because in that movie he had 2 girls who were like willing to marry him pretty much. So I feel like that is pretty cool, honestly. But again, in the movie The Mall Cop, he literally was being fat shamed left and right, like brutally. I think he had diabetes in that movie, like type 2 diabetes, and he was brutally fat shamed for it. He was known as like the overweight cop. And of course, another person I think of on top of my head is of course Jack Black. Jack Black is like, he is known as being like the fat funny comedian, even now he is. But recently I was rewatching him in School of Rock, and that was his thinnest in School of Rock. He generally really wasn't that big. He had a freaking jawline, he had a waist, he really wasn't big at all. But his whole character was being fat, being lazy, being a deadbeat, being like, even like some of the kids fat shamed him, like.
You know who else has a weight issue?
Who?
Me.
Why aren't you on a diet?
Because I like to eat. Is that such a crime?
So basically, in conclusion, even though unfortunately fat shaming is still a thing and it's always going to be a thing, unfortunately, but times have definitely changed, and there is a lot of great representation of plus size people in the media now, and they're not just the butt of the joke, such as in the show Bridgerton, where the main character is plus size and she meets and falls in love with an attractive guy, and she is known as beautiful and happy. The same with the 2023 movie, the Barbie movie, where there is a beautiful plus size Barbie who is included, and her weight is never mentioned. She is known as happy and beautiful, and of course she gets with one of the Kens. Generation Z may have a lot of issues when it comes to sensitivity, but in some ways it's needed. People are now starting to notice all the issues that I put into this video. And again, this video isn't supposed to bring anyone down, it's not supposed to make anyone feel bad about themselves. This is showing how crazy times have changed and how crazy body standards have changed. There's so much equality now, even though it's only been 20 years since this whole fiasco basically, but there's inclusivity now, that you don't have to just lose weight and be extra skinny to be popular, to be famous, to be in anything, to not be made fun of. Those are some of the best movies and shows right now. So I'm gonna end this video with a Lady Gaga quote. Queen. You define beauty yourself, but society doesn't define your beauty. I know, cringe, but it's okay. Just roll with it. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. I guess I'll see you guys around the next one. Bye.